Welcome back to the Bronx Journal. You know the story. There are those who believe immigrants come to this country to collect welfare and live off the government, when in fact we know they come to work sometimes even harder than anyone else. Yet they don't get to exercise the same rights that the rest of us have, and they have to struggle for the opportunities the rest of us take for granted. In fact, immigrants are fighting to have a voice and a place in this country, and with a little help and guidance, these individuals can prove to become valuable assets to society. Today on the Bronx Journal, we have a representative of an organization that aims to help new immigrants in the transition they make to life in the United States, and an immigrant who is here to tell us about some of the problems they face. Valeria Treves is the executive director of New Immigrant Community Empowerment, and Jesus Bueno is one of the immigrants who benefits from her program. Valeria and Jesus, it's a pleasure having you on the program. Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Valeria, tell me all about your group. How does it work? How many people does it benefit?
So New Immigrant Community Empowerment, or NICE, is a community-based organization in Jackson Heights, Queens, that works with the local community. We're composed primarily of day laborers and domestic workers who are new to this country and are generally facing a lot of workplace injustices. We go out every week and talk to workers at the day labor stops, las paradas, talking to about 60 to 70 workers per morning that we're out there. We also bring them together in various committees. For example, our Comité de Trabajadores that holds ongoing meetings of these workers. And we offer a range of services from ESOL classes, up to 100 people take these classes per year. We also offer financial literacy courses, a tax clinic so that they can do their taxes.
Stop. How do you do all of this? Where do you get the money? Is it volunteer? Is it funding that comes from different sources? How many people do you have working, doing all of this for you?
So we're a small organization hoping to continue to grow. We have a small staff of 3 people and 3.5 people, 3 full-time, 1 part-time. We have volunteer teachers. We partner with attorneys that volunteer their time as well through other nonprofits, and have a number of allies in the communities in terms of other organizations that we partner up with. In terms of our funding sources,
I mean, how do you pay the 3 people, or 3.5 people that you say you have?
So we raise our money through foundations. We have funders like the Mertz Gilmore Foundation, the New York Foundation, New York Community Trust, North Star Fund.
Can people make donations
Those
too?
are some of our main funders, but of course we always rely on the generosity of individuals as well, and we hope that community members can make contributions. They can do so easily by going to our website.
Okay, and you mentioned in the very beginning when you first started, you mentioned that you help day laborers and domestic workers.
That's exactly
when we
right.
talk about these people who are in this situation looking for work, we're not talking about just men who we see in the street. There's women who are also doing domestic work.
Yeah, and the conditions...
And they're not as visible. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I think that's exactly right. You know, day laborers are sometimes easier to find because they're very visible in the community. We know where all the major stops are in our community. But with the women, they're harder to reach. A lot of women are very isolated on the job. Sometimes they're live-in nannies, and they do face a level of exploitation that we must be active on. Most of the outreach that we do to domestic workers is through network outreach. So we have a membership organization. We train other women to be leaders. We train them in their rights, and they go out and talk to other women who may be facing workplace abuse. And that's how we reach very vulnerable and hard to reach immigrants.
Okay, and when you say workplace abuse, what kind of abuses are they facing? Is that what that study is about?
This one is a little different.
I know you have a study that you want to talk about.
Yeah, so we do, workplace abuse generally falls into unpaid wages, people not being paid what they deserve to be paid under the law, or not being paid at all.
Or is it because they make a deal, they know you're undocumented, they make a deal with you, and then they go back on it?
Yeah.
Does that happen?
That happens a lot, and Jesus can tell you some stories about even things that happen to him. A lot of times employers will abandon workers. For example, at a construction site, they pick them up every day of the week, but Friday's payday, and guess what? The employer is not there to pay the wages.
And that's how they do it. They don't pay you on a daily basis, they wait until Friday.
It depends. Everything can be bargained on the street corners, but sometimes they will disappear on the day that they're supposed to pay you. What our study is about is this study that we put together. It's called Dreams and Schemes in Queens, New York. And it's about immigrants struggling to obtain status and also to obtain jobs through employment agencies. What we
And
started,
there's also a lot of exploitation there.
there's a lot of problems there as well. What we started noticing is that our members were suffering not only when they were going to work and not getting paid, but they were also suffering in the ways that they were spending their money. We started noticing in our community that there were a lot of predatory services, a lot of substandard services, and a lot of fraud in the community. So for example,
geared specifically toward cheating this particular group of people?
Yeah, there's a lot of businesses that are targeting newly arrived immigrants and offering them services that they think they need and then not following up on those services. For example, we have a problem with fraud in immigration services. Some people may go to attorneys, to notarios, to immigration service providers, thinking that they can change their status, thinking that they can bring their family over or that they can obtain a work permit when really they don't qualify for those services. And unfortunately, you have providers that are taking money from this community and not providing the services that they're supposed to. In a worse situation, they'll file the wrong kind of paperwork with immigration, and this can actually lead to an immigrant's deportation.
Wow. Let me make this a bilingual segment now on the Bronx Journal. We're going to go to Spanish because Jesus only speaks Spanish. Jesus, por favor, explícame cuál es la situación que tienen los trabajadores como tú, que algunas veces, ella me estaba explicando que algunas veces no les pagan. Después que han hecho el trabajo, prometen que les van a pagar y no les pagan.
Claro, por supuesto. Sí, es verdad. Cuando vamos a la parada, nos promete pagar un precio y cuando llega al trabajo, ya cuando nos llega al sitio del trabajo, nos hace trabajar y ya al fin de la jornada, bueno, se reclama, bueno, deme mi día, ¿no?
Sí.
Y dice, no, regresa mañana y entonces ahí comienza.
He's explaining, I should translate, Jesus is explaining that you begin the job, you agree to a certain amount of money, they take you to the place where you're going to do the work, you do the work, and at the end of the day, when you're expecting to collect, they're telling you, no, you have to wait until mañana. Y mañana se convierte en mañana y otro mañana y otro mañana, ¿no? Muchas veces, ¿existen muchos casos de personas que no le han pagado?
Claro, por supuesto. Como tenemos en el programa que es el Centro Comunitario de NICE, ahí en las reuniones, en ese meeting que tenemos, una vez a la semana, ahí aprendemos porque todos contamos nuestras experiencias, cada uno de ellos, y entonces sí existe eso con muchos.
Jesus is explaining that they are able to compare notes once they go to the NICE center and they all compare notes about who treated them which way and who paid them and who doesn't pay. And do you keep track of the employers? Like, do you know, are you able to tell Jesus, avoid that particular guy because he's not going to pay you?
Yeah, you know, the day laborers do a lot of that organizing even on the street. The problem is that it's a really large industry. There's a lot of subcontracting within the industry. Oftentimes the workers aren't aware exactly who is hiring them and who is not hiring because the level of subcontracting is such. And when they come to the meetings in the Comité de Trabajadores, like he's explaining on Wednesday nights, they tell each other how to avoid those problems, not only in terms of the individuals, but the lies that they use, the promises that they use, and they educate one another on how to avoid that. At the meetings, we also offer legal assistance. So if they have an unpaid wage claim, they can talk to a lawyer and learn what their possibilities are.
Tell me a little bit more, if you could, about the employment agencies. Are they the problem? Are the employment agencies actually helping, or are they cheating these people?
So part of our investigation was to employment agencies. We polled a number of people that had used employment agencies. We also did mystery shopping at employment agencies and went in. We noticed that there's many illicit employment agencies in our community, meaning that they're not licensed, they don't have the proper signage up. We also noticed that they're not offering contracts the way that they're supposed to be offering contracts. They are sending people to bogus addresses that don't exist, or oftentimes they're sending an immigrant that has certain qualifications to a job that requires a different one. And most of all, they're charging advance fees and not rendering services, which is completely against the law. If they don't find you a job, they're supposed to reimburse that advance fee. In our study, we found that 80% of the people that we talked to had paid an employment agency and not received a job.
Wow.
So the search for work is a struggle, whether it's through the employment agencies or it's at the paradas or the corners of the day laborers.
Okay, and what about the immigration paperwork itself? I mean, over the years in the Hispanic community, we've known that this has been a terrible problem where you have this fly-by-night insurance, multi-service agencies, storefront. They also claim that they're immigration advisors. They know very little about immigration. They usually lead people down the wrong path. Is that improving, or is that just as bad as it used to be years ago?
You know, I think authorities have tried to regulate this. I think there's even an initiative actually at the White House level. There's been initiatives through the Attorney General office, and there's been some progress. Unfortunately, it hasn't been enough. And we're finding through our study that this is still very prevalent in the community. We put together some policy recommendations to change this, and we're also working hard on educating the community.
There's a lot of people in the Hispanic community claiming to be immigration lawyers when they're not.
That's happening. Sometimes they are notaries, and in Latin America, a notario is a high-end attorney.
Right.
So they purposely mislead individuals into believing that they're an attorney when they're really just a notary public. So that's a very widespread issue. I think it's about having stricter enforcement. We also want to change what's called the unauthorized practice of law to actually include the filling of immigration forms within that, and we need the enforcement agencies to be out there in the community more.
I have one more question for Jesús. Jesús, explícame, ¿han mejorado las cosas? ¿Cuántos años hace que tú estás aquí y has visto, porque existen agencias como la de ella, que las cosas están un poquito mejor para ustedes?
Bueno, yo estoy como 6 años aquí, y en esos 6 años de trayectoria, bueno, los trabajos han estado un poco bajo.
Por la economía.
La economía, como todos saben, ¿no? Y al respecto al centro comunitario, o sea, la organización, lo único que he conocido es la organización NICE. A otra organización no he conocido, pero por medio de aquí de la organización NICE estoy conociendo al resto de organizaciones. Entonces, recién voy entrando en eso.
Jesus is explaining that he's been here 6 years, and because of this organization, he's learning about all the other organizations and so forth. Pero Jesús, ¿estás recibiendo servicios ahora que no recibías antes?
Sí.
¿Te beneficias por eso? ¿Encuentras que las cosas han mejorado para los trabajadores porque existen agencias como la de ella?
Claro, por supuesto, porque ahí nos enfoca a defender nuestros derechos, a dar orientaciones cómo defendernos en el trabajo, uno, y otro es nos ayuda también a defender en nuestra seguridad en nuestros trabajos, como por ejemplo con la organización, con el OSHA, nos da clases con OSHA, y
Health and
también nos ayuda con clases de inglés. Bueno,
why don't you explain everything that he's saying, all the services that you do provide? Because he's basically, Jesus is basically listing all the services, including English courses, job training. Please explain all the services that you provide
what
to them.
Jesus was talking about is that they're learning about their rights as workers, the minimum standards that employers must meet, and that they have a right to get paid on the job and not work absurd hours. He's also explaining that they have access to health and safety trainings. We also provide OSHA certifications, and this helps them know their rights in terms of the health and safety on the job, what the employer must provide, what kind of protective materials that they must wear. Because you have to understand that they're working very tough jobs that can be very dangerous as well. Now also with Sandy and the advent of the storm, many of them are going to those affected areas, getting picked up by trucks to go there, and health and safety is a major concern.
One last question, we're almost out of time, but I want to ask you if you feel optimistic because President Obama got reelected, because the Latino vote helped to get him there, back in the White House. Are things going to change for people like Jesus?
I do feel optimistic. I do feel like we have a new chance with the second term of the president. I do think that Latinos have been growing in power, and we're showing that force through the electoral vote. And I especially feel optimistic because we've been organizing. You've seen the youth, the dreamers that have been out there and very prominent in this struggle. We've had workers that are demonstrating as well and fighting for their rights. And we're going to be talking to all our representatives in the Senate, in the Congress. We hope the public talks to their representatives and that together we all push for immigration reform.
Jesús, ¿existe optimismo dentro de la comunidad de inmigrantes porque las cosas van a mejorar, porque les van a dar algún tipo de amnistía, porque salió el presidente Obama electo? ¿Se sienten optimistas ustedes?
Claro, por supuesto. Estamos en espera de eso.
Jesus says he is, of course, very optimistic and waiting for it, and it's been a real pleasure. Please tell us where people get a hold of your agency real quick.
Sure. If they want to call us, they can call us at 718-205-8796. We mainly work with the Queens community, but we can hear from anybody.
But if you hear from the Bronx, you can tell them where to go in the Bronx, I'm sure.
That's exactly right. We can link them with other organizations. And for supporters out there, they can always check out our website, www.nynice.org. They can sign up for our listserv. They can find us on Facebook, and they can also find us on Twitter.
Valeria and Jesús, thank you both for being on the program. Muchísimas gracias por estar aquí con nosotros y muy buena suerte para ti, hermano.
Muy amable, gracias.
We'll be back soon with another edition of the Bronx Journal. This is our first bilingual edition. See you soon.